Francie. The levity this morning is a little bit long, so I have to read it. I don't want to miss any parts. So, you're going to switch it? Good. Yeah, that's perfect. A woman that was at her hairdresser's getting her hairstyle for the trip to Rome with her husband. She mentioned the trip to her hairdresser, who responded, "Rome? Why would anyone want to go there? It's crowded, it's dirty. You're crazy to go to Rome." "So, how are you getting there?" "We talked, we're taking United," was the reply. "We got a great rate." "United," exclaimed the hairdresser. "That's a terrible airline. The planes are old, their flight attendants are ugly, and they're always late." "So where are you staying in Rome?" "We'll be at this exclusive place over on Rome's Tiber River called Teste." "Don't go any further. I know that place. Everybody thinks it's going to be something special and exclusive, but it's really a dump. We're going to go to see the Vatican and maybe get to see the Pope." "That's rich," laughed the hairdresser. "You and a million other people trying to see him. He'll look like the size of an ant." "Boy, good luck in this lousy trip of yours. You're going to need it." A month later, the woman again came in for a haircut, and the hairdresser asked about her trip to Rome. "It was wonderful," explained the woman. "Not only were we on time on one of United's brand new planes, but it was overbooked, and they bumped us up to first class. The food and wine were wonderful, and I had a handsome 28-year-old steward who waited on me hand and foot. And the hotel was great. They just finished a $5 million remodeling job, and now it's a jewel, the finest hotel in the city. They too were overbooked, so they apologized and gave us the owner's suite at no extra charge." "Well," muttered the hairdresser, "that's all well and good, but I know you didn't get to see the Pope." "Actually, we were quite lucky, because as we toured the Vatican, a Swiss guard tapped me on the shoulder and explained that the Pope likes to meet some of the visitors, and if I could be so kind as to step into his private room and wait, the Pope will personally greet me." Sure enough, 5 minutes later, the Pope walked through the door and shook my hand, and I knelt down and he spoke a few kind words to me. "Oh, really? What did he say?" asked the hairdresser. The woman replied, "Who messed up your hair?"
Fashion hairdresser.
Yeah, fashion Pope, I guess. Anyway, today's lesson is called Open Door, or New Doors rather, and it's, of course, timing is everything on the lessons, and so Reverend Francie and I usually don't write these in advance too long, and this one really came real quick during the week this week, early in the week. And so I want to ask you, have you ever been in a rut? Yeah, all of us have been in a rut, I think, at some point in time. Heck, if I wouldn't have been in a rut, sort of a rut, I probably would have never gone to seminary. That's not a good testament, but that's true. So anyway, we all get into ruts, and sometimes we think that that this is just we misconfuse a rut sometimes for something that seems like the same thing over and over again that we're doing. But oh yeah, these ruts. Francie wants to remind this because I did ask her to look for this specific one. These ruts here, believe it or not, we went out one day. We used to live in Kansas, and we went out one day because we lived there for a long time, and we wanted to see the Santa Fe Trail, the famous Santa Fe Trail. And so we went out there one time, and look what it is. It's just two little ruts in the middle of a wheat field. Or not even a wheat field, in the middle of a field. So it's really special. A couple hours driving to there, and we'll get it.
The kids were thrilled.
It was a wonderful day. No, it was fun. I mean, what did you expect? It was a trail, so no. They still have ruts there, though, and that's not the rut I'm talking about. They still have ruts there. Anyway, when we get in a rut, we can look at it. It's funny because I have, as a minister, sometimes we have, well, actually quite often, you have people come in and talk to you about things that are going on in their life, and a lot of them are what we're talking about here, ruts. They're into doing something that's similar over and over again, and they think that their life's going nowhere, and that's one way to look at it. But if you look at it from not only a spiritual aspect, but if you look at it from a realistic point of view, You're not doing the same thing every day, even though you may think you're doing the same thing. Because we have new doors in front of us all the time. And I'm sure you've heard the saying, when one door closes, another opens, right?
Yeah.
Well, we should know, though, also that the new doors are available to us at all times. You know, that old saying, when one door closes, another opens, is really just us realizing when that happens that we do have other options. But when a door closes for us and we recognize it, we either go through a new door or we are stagnant, and then we can definitely be in a rut because we don't see what is available to us. But I want to tell you today that for sure God has a brand new door for you. And if we think about that, I hope that you can think about it and say, hey, wow, that's really cool, because if I'm open to it, God has a brand new way of life for me. I just talked to my brother the night before last, I think it was, or was it last night? I don't remember. The night before last, and we don't get to talk that often. We should talk more often. We talk via the internet, but that's not the same thing as verbally. And he lives in Wichita, so that's why we don't talk that much. But anyway, we were talking, and you know, we've all, Mark is my brother's name, and we were always raised in unity. Yet, you know, he went a different path after he became an adult than I did, and I stayed in unity. He didn't. He went more to the old-time religion, or whatever you want to call it. Anyway, so not all the time, but this conversation went on for a while, so we got into the religion conversation. And I'm glad that we've both grown, because I'll take some responsibility for it. We've both grown to the point where it's not an argument, it is just a conversation. And you know, that is a door that both of us have chose to go through. You know, we can talk about it still, but we don't have to be, well, this is the way, and this is only the way, right? Right? And you can think that, you know, well, unity, how could unity be that way? But ask people that know me that have been in unity a long time. Warren is a darn conservative unity guy. I mean, when it comes to unity, he looks at all the old ways as being the right way instead of any of the new ways, right? Even though unity in itself is open. So I think all the old teachings and the new teachings are open. But anyway, there's always new doors, and God has a new door open for us at all times. And I've got a few verses I want you to hear from the Bible. Trust in the Lord, and I know you've heard these before. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, or with your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will make straight your paths. So, what I really wanted to point out in this, and I used one this a couple of weeks ago too, and it was a little bit different. And it must have been from a different Bible. But anyway, because it said with all your heart. Oh, it does say that there too. Okay. But anyway, this is something I wanted you to see again, because I wanted you to think about how sometimes, especially when we're in a rut, definitely when we're in a rut, we're just looking at the physical things around us and in our life, and we're very closed-minded, to be quite honest, right? When we're in a rut, because we're not looking and seeing, or we're not seeing anything at that time. Now that's nothing wrong with that, because sometimes, you know, when we pray, we can be at a point where we're saying, God, please give me this, or please do that, a pleading prayer. You know, we can be in that position at sometimes in life. And we don't have to be, though, because if we look for the new doors and we look for answers that we haven't thought of before, we might see a new way of happening. It's just like what we were praying for a minute ago on health and things. If we don't see somebody healthy, and that's why I kind of gasp when somebody gasps about a diagnosis. He's been diagnosed with cancer, and people go, you know, like, oh man, that's what they got. That's not what they got in our mind, I hope. Because if that's what they got in our mind, our prayers are going nowhere. You know, we can say, oh, please, God, help him get over the cancer that he has, right? Or we can say, God, thank you for this perfect human being that has perfect health right here and now. That's a door that we're opening for that person. Do you see that? If you don't open that door for that person, then and that person's in a rut, then that person may never see that door, right? And that diagnosis is not only a diagnosis like it's supposed to be, it's more of a death sentence, isn't it? As far as our physical body. If we really care for that person, we're not going to sign on to that death sentence, are we?
Right.
Now sometimes if we pray for the highest and best good for somebody, and I know that especially with loved ones, this is very hard to understand at that time. But sometimes if we pray for the highest and best good for somebody in a health situation, their highest and best good may be to make their transition. And that's hard to say and hard to think sometimes. But, it may be. But we have to be open to that. Their best, whatever is the best for them in their situation right now. When we get the message from Spirit, we must follow because we have closed a door that no longer serves us because we have grown spiritually. This is where I see, from a minister standpoint, over the many, many years, where people come to Unity and they get all on fire. Either they're on fire because they love the message or whatever, and then they get on fire, and then it starts working for them, and then they leave Unity. And they go, well, I got this down, see you later. Right? Which is all cool and fine. I'm glad it's working for you. And you can always continue to grow. I want to see all of y'all to the point where, first of all, I have to open up to see it, but all of y'all where your spirits are just up here, and they're so wonderful. You've grown to the point, you've opened all these new doors to a point where you've got not only this third dimension down, but you're up in the fourth and the fifth, and you're saying, hey, this is cool. This is cool. I can do whatever I want in the third because I've got everything going on here. Right? And the world is indeed unlimited. No one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. And I wanted to bring this one up because of the fact that I think that we all know, and here I want to kind of use an example here. We all know how this can happen. If we have an understanding of our spirituality and we want to grow that, yet we feel bogged down or held back by our 9-to-5 jobs that we have to go to every single day, then we're kind of looking at it a little bit different. We're looking at it this way because we're serving two masters, aren't we? Well, I got to go to work and make money, right, Warren? Well, yeah, you probably should, yet you don't have to hate the one the part of the job and love your spirituality. You can love both. Because we'll never be able to open a new door as long as we are serving two masters. So if we're serving, and it's funny because I didn't put this one up there, but you remember money is the root of all evil. Well, that's not true. It can be the root of all evil, but also it can be the root of a lot of good, can't it? You can do a lot of good with money, can't you? You can spread it around, help yourself, do a lot of things, right? So it's not the root of all evil, it's the love of money that can be the downfall. But if you're devoted to one, you despise the other. So like if you're devoted to your spiritual aspect and then you don't like your job because you think that's holding you back, look at it a different way. That's an opportunity. So this is another quote from Matthew. It says, what do you think? A man has 2 sons, and he went to the first and said, son, go and work in the vineyard today. And the son answered, I will not. But afterward he changed his mind and went. And he went to the second son and said the same. And he answered, I go, sir, but did not go. This is a funny teaching, I think, because you look at it and you think, well, the first one told the truth, and then he changed his mind. Then you look at the second one and said, well, maybe he was going to go, but he didn't go. That's really kind of missing it, though, on this one. I guess the second one really was not telling the truth. He was telling his dad what he wanted to hear, right? Mm-hmm. Which, I don't know if you were a parent, but I don't know if your kids have ever done that to you. My adult kids do it more than when they're younger, to be quite honest, but in my experience. But, we have to know that which one of these, and I'm not saying you should pick, but which one of these is better? Which one is telling more of the truth? Well, the first one really is kind of telling more of the truth, isn't he? He says he didn't want to because he didn't want to at the time. But then he went because that's what his father wanted. And you can think of this too as what we're talking about before. Instead of a man, what if God was this? Or Spirit is this? Because this is how it happens in our life. Spirit asks 2 people, go to work today. And one says, I will not because I don't want to. This is Saturday, this is my day off. He thinks later, well, wait, I'm being guided by Spirit to do this, so I'm going to go ahead and go in and see what the point is. And the second one, God says, you ought to go to work today. And he says, okay, I'll go. And never shows up. I'll bet you that there's a blessing behind the first one. But first, and this is the last one, but first seek the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. That's good, Svancy. Look at that, what she's got here. The kingdom of God, population you. That's fun. We all know this Bible verse, and yet how often do we really think of that? I mean, even I'm thinking of my own life and being in ministry. I think about it, and yet do I think about it all the time? Probably not. Kind of shouldn't tell myself there, probably. But I probably don't. Because sometimes I'm in a situation where, things are going along and I'm just going along, right? And that's how I can find myself in a rut, though, if I do that. Because all the time there are new doors for us, all the time. And if we open our eyes up to see the beauty around us, which would be going to the kingdom first, then it can change our viewpoint of things that are happening around us, right? Today in the news, we are hearing a lot of, I find it interesting that how newscasts, no matter what newscast you listen to, try to feed on separation. Have you noticed that? I mean, I'm not the only one that's noticed that, am I?
Fear.
Does it make a difference which side you're on, or if you don't pick a side, whatever? They seem to feed on that. And I know that's newsworthy, and I know it's something that like this last few weeks, we need to hear about that stuff. We do need to hear about that. But how much of our own power that we possess do we give to that? Because that's a choice for us. How much power we're going to give to that? Do we give the power to our power to the idea of separation? When I guarantee you, if you've met somebody, if you've taken a side on whatever the subject is, and you would meet a person that is on the opposite idea without knowing that on the street, you wouldn't be holding any grudge against them because you wouldn't know that. Right?
That's right.
It's kind of like my brother and I talking about religion. Before, when he went over to the dark side, when he went over to the right, I'm just kidding. When he went that way, we couldn't talk about it for a while. Now, from my viewpoint, he wasn't open to hearing anything other than what he was listening to. From his viewpoint, I was wrong. Well, I don't know. I can't say really from his viewpoint, can I? But I know we weren't available to talk about it at the time. There's so many things that we have in common, that we are so much more alike than different. Amen. That to let whatever the subject is, whatever the topic is, get between us as spiritual beings puts us in that rut, prevents us from growing and seeing the new door in front of us.
Yeah.
If you look back in history, all of the major idea differences that have come to a head, like we have coming to a head right now, have done what? Have shifted the consciousness usually to a better understanding in the world as far as the race consciousness. They all have. Now, I'm not going to get deep into this, and I don't want to offend anybody, but I'm not going to say but, I don't want to offend anybody, and I think anybody who has been hurt for anything should be hurt. I do. Period. Because I want them well. I want them to stop giving their power to something that has happened to them, whatever that may be. I want to be able to say, hey, I'm here to help you, to listen, not only to listen to you, but to help you grow and not have this hurt you anymore. Because a physical hurt can last a hell of a lot longer than the physical hurt, can it? Can it? No matter what it is. The person who comes home from a military tour who lost a limb, not going to have that limb back, is he? Or she? He or she? My grandfather loved him. He was the patriarch of our family, and he was a hard worker, boy. He was a real hard worker. And he had this wheat truck once. That wheat trucks, if you don't know, they're pretty high up off the ground because they have to go in fields. Anyway, the step was probably about that to the ground there, probably about that high for the first step to get up into the truck. Well, he misstepped one day, fell off of it and hurt his leg. And Grandpa was not a guy that would like to go to the doctor, even though he knew he should have. So he didn't go to the doctor for a long time, and a couple of weeks into it, his toes started turning black. And so finally convinced him to go to the doctor. Well, gangrene had set in, and so they had no choice at that time, and I don't think they still do, but they had to cut off his leg at the knee. He was a very active person, and even though he was older, in his 70s, he still was very active. Having his leg amputated from the knee down, physically should not have killed him at all. Okay? Shouldn't have done it. But it hurt him psychologically so much that he really, even though we got to take him home for a little bit, he really never mentally recovered. Why? Because he thought that, this is going to stop me from getting around. That's what I do. How is it possible for me to live life without getting around? Right? So no matter what the physical injury is, there's more to it than that. We have to be open to the new doors that are available to us. Grandpa was a great man during his life, and I think he could have continued to be a great man in different avenues. Yet, it's a decision that each of us have to make too. The guidance you receive will let you know how to open God's doors. No door will ever be closed without another one opening. Now we know that from not only from the old saying, but when we say the old saying, we think of just one door closing and one opening, don't we? Because that's really what it says. But that isn't the truth at all. The truth is that we always, even if a door doesn't close, we always have new doors available to us if we listen to Spirit. If we don't listen to Spirit, then it's kind of hard to see Him. But there are always new doors available to us. And the way we get those doors open is to just go into prayer and meditation and listen to that guidance. And what would be the trait, you think, that we have to open those new doors, especially if one hasn't closed to us?
Faith.
Huh?
Faith.
Faith is a good one, yes.
Patience.
Patience. I like that, really. Faith, patience, kind, and loving too. Right. Love is the main trait that we have to be able to have to open the new doors. We can't serve two masters at the same time. We can't hate the person who believes different than me and expect to grow in our own understanding of a subject, can we? It's not possible. We can't. We have to be open to it. And, us in unity, we are so important to the world now, I think, because of the fact that we have to not only hold that high watch, but we have to demonstrate it. We have to demonstrate it from unity. We always are a lot in society say, well, somebody has to do it. That somebody is me. I have to do it. I have to be able to say, I love you to someone that that I strongly disagree with, don't I? We've got an interesting conversation going on amongst unity ministers. I keep telling you this different stuff, and I probably shouldn't. But, you know, we were, and I posed it actually because somebody asked me, a minister asked me a question, but I posed it and we've gotten some wonderful different answers from different unity ministers as far as who do we allow in our church? And what would you think a unity, though, would say? You would think, well, everybody's allowed in our church. And that's what I was raised with. Everybody's allowed in our church. You'd be surprised, though, how many people, how many ministers are saying, well, no, they can't come to our church. Well, there's extremes. You know, well, one of the things that was brought up was, and this was a woman that I really like, minister, that is married to a black man. She said, well, not only will I not allow the KKK member to come to my church, but I won't, because it could be hurtful to the people in my congregation, but also it would be very hurtful to my husband. I understand that. I totally understand that. And yet, if we don't, I mean, if a KKK member comes in the sheet and everything, heck yeah, we're not going to have him in here, right? You know, we're not going to have him in here saying, excuse me, but I think you're at the wrong meeting. But if a person comes in out of their garb and wants to be open to maybe seeing something different than what they know, my God, I hope we're open to that. As hard as it may be for me, my God, I hope I'm open to that. I say that, and I've asked 3 different people during my ministry to leave the church. 3 different people. I'm not going to lie to you about it. I'm not free of this. One person was an abortion rights person. It had nothing to do with, it had to do with his belief because he was there to disrupt the service. So we were actually, and I can really kind of mark him off because we didn't have to ask him to leave, but we had people sitting on each side of him because he came up to the front of the very front row, and we knew who he was, and everybody knows who he was as far as if you're into the understanding the abortion people involved. And he sat on the front row, and so we had 2 sergeant of arms, one sit on each side of him, and ready if he started to raise a commotion to ask him to leave. The second and third were both pedophiles. And even though I did ask them to leave the church, I gave them an opportunity. Now the first guy did not, but that was because it just didn't work out that way. But the 2 pedophiles, I did say to both of them, I would be glad, because there's a way they can come to church, but everybody has to agree to it. It's a long, drawn-out deal, and it very rarely happens. So I asked them to leave, but I said I'd be glad to have lessons with you at another, either here at a different time or at a different place at another time. I'd be glad to do that. And I know I probably shouldn't be online saying all this. But anyway, I hope you get what I'm saying. There may be people of different beliefs than us, different history than us, yet we have to be open to sharing ideas, or else there's never going to be a change, right? And there may be a time and a place where it's not appropriate to be able to do that, right? My first, in all 3 of those cases, my first obligation is to my congregation. And I can't put them in harm's way. And that's what essentially the ministers were saying, and I understand that and I agree with that. And it's the same as the person you meet on the street that you think's real nice and they have a totally different viewpoint on a subject that you would have an argument about, right? We don't have to let a single thing get in our way of understanding that the Christ in me sees, recognizes, and blesses the Christ in you. We don't have to do that. But we have to have love to do that. Now, it may not be at the time. Sometimes, And even to me, even if it becomes rote to them, at some point they may open up and hear it. Okay? Because I say that because if I'm having a major upheaval in myself over a subject, and I meet somebody that is on the other side of that subject, then at that moment, my physical idea probably won't be love, will it? It won't be probably at that moment, will it? And to be able to stay in that relationship, I probably won't be saying or thinking love, will I? So, what do? I think to myself, this can be a new door. For me, not for someone else. And that's the way I have to look at it. Not that, and it's the same when I'm trying to convey where I stand on something. I'm not trying to change your mind about anything. I'm not. What I want you to do is to feel open to look at things in a lot of different ways. And if you do, maybe you'll see it the way I see it. Maybe you won't. Right? Because we all have different backgrounds. We all have different things that have happened in our life to shape us to what we are today, as far as our personality, right? But our individuality that lives beyond this is all the same. It's all full of love. So we can't get stuck on our personality. So I'm hoping that we can all understand that this will open a newness in life by understanding the spiritual facts of our beingness. Because that individuality is our spiritual togetherness, if you will. Charles Fillmore says this about new birth: the realization by man of his spiritual identity. See, and that's another thing that we could say to ourselves when we have a big disagreement with somebody is this really me acting or thinking in a spiritual way? Is this me coming from love? With the fullness of power and glory that follows, a birth is coming into the state of being. Man first, this is important, man first is born or comes into a state of physical being. He thinks of himself as flesh, as material. The new birth, which is being saved or whatever other thing that you want, this is even like the new birth is like the resurrection, the second coming, okay? Is the coming into a higher state of being that is alive to the fact that man is like God, one with God. And don't take that too much and say, oh my God, we aren't saying that we're all gods. I am saying that, but don't take it into the fact that go out and spout that or else everybody will look at you like you weirdo. Or actually say that I said it and they can think I'm a little weirdo. Friends, you got another one, good one. It is the birth of a new day, the birth of a new year. He also says this about the new race. The race of men expressing the perfection of God is typified in Jesus. And I would even say typified in you, each one of you here today. All men and women are potential members of this new race. They can become part of it by following and demonstrating the Christ principle. And you know, we in Unity are Christian based, so we use that, yet we can use other things here too. So if we can join in this new race that joins us all in one, what do you think that would look like?
Heaven on earth.
It would be, yeah. It would look real good. Heaven on earth, you're right.
Heaven on earth.
See, I may be, I don't know, gullible. Sometimes I look at that and say, you know, I'm gullible to thinking that this is possible because, you know, one of the things I wrote in that ministers' discussion group is that because of the feedback that I was getting by some, not all, but by some ministers, I was saying, so you don't think that we can have a world that works for all? And some of them said, no, we can't right now because of the fact that the way that we're ego-centered. But that's looking at the personality. That's looking at the personality. As long as I'm looking at the personality of someone, I'm going to have disagreements. Yeah, we're going to have disagreements. But see, the good thing about the personality having disagreements has us look for those new doors and a new commonality, a new way of doing things that may be better than what we've been doing in the past, right? That's the good thing. But we can't look at that disagreement as a negative, because that's when we are stuck in our ego. We're stuck in I'm right, you're wrong, right? Right? I don't know. That's it.
Wrong.
I'm right, you're wrong.
Right,
Whatever,
wrong.
yeah. Correct, thank you. So let's join this new race that joins us all as one. I've got a fun video now that tells you about this. That's from the movie Frozen. I've never seen it. How many people have seen it?
Frozen?
Yeah, Frozen? Oh, there has been a lot of people. Cool. I know it's popular, but I've never seen it. Once the kids get older, I'll see those again.
If you had little girls, you've seen it a million times.
There you go. Well, anyway, we'll see this.